Hi everyone, and welcome for this new tutorial how to paint quickly the Reedemer from Claustrophobia. As you can see, I make the choice to paint it pretty quickly to have a very good tabletop level and in a very dark way, just to fit with original assets and graphic from this game. So let's go for the paint. I start by primed all the miniatures with some leather born from Army Painter. This is a spray, and now I start by adding some the first light with barbarian flesh on the face. As you can see, I'm going to paint just always. I'm going to try to always see the previous color on my model. So I'm not going to put the every time I put color, I always preserve a small part of my previous color. So as you can see now, I continue with some elf flesh color, and I'm going to reach smaller and smaller surfaces. And now I come back just with some few points of ivory, and now I'm going to put my first highlights on the leather. So I'm going to use a fur brown. This color is pretty red, so it's going to give me a very red leather. As you can see, and as I already explained before, I always try to preserve small parts of my previous color. In that case, I'm going to put on every edges my color, just to be sure to have some highlights on just some few points. The Army Painter color is pretty easy to put, and you don't need to dilute a lot because it's not very covering, so you can make more easily every kind of transition. And more I want something covering, and more I'm going to make some different layer. As you can see, I'm going to use now some uniform gray I mix with my fur brown just to push a little bit more my highlights. Every time I'm going to reduce the surfaces I reach with my paint to simulate transition. I had a little bit of gray, uniform gray, into the shadow of my head just to create an answer to the color I always put on the leather. As you can see now, I'm going to push more and more shadow with some dark sky blue from Army Painter to put more shadow, more deep effect into the leather. I decided to have something very monochrome kind of effect on this mini, because it's Claustrophobia have a very dark background, and I try to respect that by using a very few different kind of color. Now I'm using again the uniform gray, but directly to create a non-metallic metal effect on the shoulder and on the weapon. And by the way, on the holy book he have in the back. As you can see, my movement is pretty quick just because the tutorial is accelerate. If you want to, you can reduce that. Just YouTube can help you about that. There are some options, so you can reduce the speed of the video. As you can see, I push some gray on the base too. The base is already sculpted, so it's more easy for me to paint. And I make all around the base with some black color. By the way, I'm going to use a black color to make some dissociation between the different parts of the miniatures. That's pretty helpful because the monochrome color I use is not a good way to make distinction between the different elements. So the black is perfect to make your delimitation between the different elements. And by the way, I'm going to use a black on the non-metallic metal color just to create more shadow. It's pretty important when you make some non-metallic metal to have a very strong contrast. So I'm going to use a lot of black, and after that I'm going to use some ivory or white to push more and more contrast on the mini. As you can see, depending on the surfaces, I'm going to push my shadow on all a way or on different kind of way, very depending on the different volume and surfaces. Don't hesitate to take a look to the other video into my channel, so you can see a lot of different way to use non-metallic metal or different kind of highlights. And don't hesitate to put a quick like on the video and put a comment if you have any question. So now I start by using some white, just to pushing more and more contrasts on the metallics. And every edges will be in white, even if this edges is in shadow. When you make some non-metallic metal effect, it's pretty important to push a lot of white, even if it's in shadow. I know that can seems a little bit weird at beginning, but you need to try it and push to the limit this kind of contrast to see the non-metallic metal effect appears. Non-metallic metal is a pretty good technical because it's not so complicated, and that's push you to go always to more and more contrasts. So that's a very good way to see if you control your dilution and if you can make in an easy way some transition. As you can see, on some few parts, the smaller part will be just I'm going to just push a little bit point of white, and that's enough to create simulate a metallic part. There are a lot of small details on the miniatures, and if even if it's plastic already assembled, the result is pretty good. So don't hesitate if you see some claustrophobia miniatures to try and to paint some of them. As you can see, again and again, I'm going to push some points of white. It's pretty important to understand that if you want a very strong color, you are not going to just don't dilute a lot and put this color. No, you need to make a lot of times the same movement to have a very strong color. I come back with some monster brown on different elements. So all the jackets is in a pretty in a fur brown. So I'm going to use a monster brown just to make a different distinction between the jacket in red brown and the all different elements will be more in monster brown, where it's more a neutral brown than the fur brown, who are more red. And after that, I'm going to add just a little bit ivory into my fur brown, as you can see, to put once again some highlights on some very small and few points. This miniatures is pretty interesting because you can paint it very easy, and that's a real pleasure to paint. So now I come back with some dark tone. You can use some strong tone too, that work, just to push a little bit more shadow into some few parts to make some distinction and to put on the base. I decided to make the center of the base more light and all around the base more dark. And I'm going to use some red, as you can see. This is a pure red from Army Painter to put on the scare on the face of the mini. Once again, I come back with some white. As I explained, more you are going to make some small layer, more this white will be stronger and stronger. I'm going to use the same white to push my highlights on the base. You can use the gray, the uniform gray just before, if you want to have a lower contrast. I continue to push more contrast on the leather just by adding a little bit orange into my fur brown. And after that, I'm going to put directly some orange on the fur brown. As you can see, I reach smaller and smaller surfaces, and never forget that the orange is not very covering, so you can put it. You just have to wait, it will be totally dry to see the real result. Once again, I come back with some ivory to push more and more contrast, and finally it's down. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't hesitate to follow, to share to your friend. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and the most important, find the time to paint. See you guys.